unmute then and discuss things more easily. But for now, let's just stay muted. And then I just threw up this slide while we're waiting. I'll reiterate again. Sorry for people who've heard this 3 times, but this is a flight chart tool we have on our website, the Vermont Butterfly Alice website. It's awesome. You can go and it takes a little bit to come on because it's actually live checking data. But I did it for the week 13, which is this week. And so you can see here's the butterflies that you probably could see this week if it were nice out. And I put a little box score down there for what people have reported so far to eButterfly for Vermont and iNaturals for Vermont. So we got 4 morning cloaks, 3 commas, no Comptons, 1 Milberts, and 1 Cabbage White. And so anybody who's seen a butterfly this year already in Vermont is throwing them up if they want to in the chat. So far, we only have 2 lucky winners that have seen a butterfly. I'm butterflyless, and I'm very sad.
Another coworker of Kent and I's at VCE and I went out on March 19th, so same day as Terry, and we saw a bunch of chickadees chasing what we think was an eastern comma. So that was pretty exciting too, but didn't get a picture to put online.
That's right. We'll have to go down to time then to find out who saw the first butterfly. Did you beat Terry in time? Susan saw a morning cloak. Oh, right after last session. Nice. That's great. Wow, a lot of people signing in. This is awesome. We're just gonna give it like till I don't know, 7:05, 3 more minutes, just because a lot of people log in a little bit late. Um, I'll flash up our etiquette again real quick. We're just trying to keep everybody on mute until the end of the meeting and use the chat for questions or observations or anything you want. One of us, Dana or myself, will try to answer questions in the chat as we go. But then at the end, we can unmute and ask questions and do whatever we want. And you're your own manager of your video. I will say that we're recording this so that people that couldn't make it tonight can watch it later. So that may tell you if you want your video on or not. So 3 people have seen butterflies, and you too, Dana. So 4 people. 4 people have seen butterflies. For those of you that are baseball fans, I put the box score up there. Boston plays tomorrow. The Red Sox play at 4 p.m. tomorrow, so that's where you'll find me watching the opening game. I try to at least listen to most games on the radio if I can, while working or something. So baseball figures into all my stuff somehow.
So Kent, the people joining has tapered off a little bit, so I think we probably can get started.
Great. All right. If you want to use this flight chart that I have here, later go to the Vermont Butterfly Atlas webpage, and it's right on the left-hand side is one of the menu items. It's the flight chart. It's really fun to use. It helps you understand what could be common each week and what can be rare, what might be flying, what isn't flying. And it's fun to look at. And it does take a little bit to load because it does live check the data, so it does take a second to load. Anyway, congratulations to everyone that's seen a butterfly so far. It doesn't look good for the next week at all for seeing butterflies. I talked about Zoom etiquette already, and so let's just get into it. This is an introduction to the second Vermont Butterfly Atlas, and we're really gearing it tonight towards new folks that are joining the Atlas or might want to join the Atlas. I know there are some folks on here um, that have watched butterflies for a long time and may have done the first Butterfly Atlas, let alone worked for the last 2 years on the second Butterfly Atlas. But tonight we're kind of gearing it towards new folks. And so you folks that have been around for a while, please feel free to add thoughts to later. But my name is Kent McFarland, and I'm from the Vermont Center for Eco Studies. I know a lot of you on here. Um, and I thank everyone that has already contributed to the any of our atlases and to any of our butterfly work. We can't do any of this stuff without folks like you, and it's really It's great to see everybody sign in and help us collect important data like this. We just couldn't do it without you. I started the Vermont Atlas of Life about 12 years ago to try to gather big data, big biodiversity data for Vermont, and start to fill in the gaps for groups of species that we don't have information for across Vermont. And it's been wildly successful again because of folks like you. And I think we're over 10 million records of organisms now in Vermont. We have a crazy big data set now to work with. And this is the second butterfly atlas. We did the first one 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And now we get to repeat it. And so we get to find out like what all the big changes have been over the last 2 decades. And so I'm really excited that we're in the middle of this atlas. I can't believe it's the second atlas already, but I welcome everyone and I thank you for joining us. Dana, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Dana Williams. I'm the community science coordinator for VCE. I'm new to this position and it's a new position for the organization, but my role is basically to help support our volunteers in everything that you do and helping us out.
And it's so much better now with Dana here this year. It's great. So we have a lot more field trips, a lot more training going on this year. And so it's going to be really great. Thanks, Dana. All right, I'm going to get into a little intro, a little butterfly intro to try to get you excited if you're not already excited about butterflies and about contributing to the atlas. Um, and if you have questions along the way, feel free to throw them in the chat. Um, and we can either address them now or at the end. So butterflies. Here's the crazy thing is if you look at this chart on the right, just insects in general, we've only discovered in the world about 20% of the insects that we think exist out there. There's still millions of insects for us to describe. And a lot of us think that we have to go to some place like Peru or Belize or somewhere exotic in order to find new species. But it turns out we can find new species right here in our backyard. And this tiger swallowtail on in this image right here is an example of that. Just last month, this is the newest species described to science, and its core range is right here in Vermont. This is called the midsummer tiger swallowtail. And so we are still learning about stuff right here in Vermont, let alone in exotic places like Peru and Colombia and places like that. This is a brand new species for Vermont. We suspected it was a new species back in the first atlas. And finally, the work has all been done. It's been published, and now we have this new tiger swallowtail species called the midsummer tiger swallowtail. And honestly, it probably couldn't have been completely done without a lot of work from community scientists like you, capturing them, taking really nice pictures of them, and documenting where they are. And so I'll be writing more about this. You'll learn more about the tiger swallowtail, but this is our newest species. So we have actual species to discover here in Vermont still. So out of all life forms in Earth, Lepidoptera, which are the moths and the butterflies, they're about 7% of all life. There's about 150 species of moths and butterflies known, and out of that, about 20% of those are about 20,000 of those, excuse me, are butterflies. So there's 20,000 species of butterflies around the world, a lot more than birds and other things. If we look at the world, look just sort of at the continent scale. In North America, we have about 725 species, but look at South America, 8,000 species of butterflies. It's the breadbasket of butterflies. So if you're ever going down on vacation to the neotropics, you're going to have a ball with the butterflies there. 8,000 species is incredible. But we have 725 in North America. If we get closer into Vermont, back in 1995, we're sort of standing on the shoulders of a lot of giants here in Vermont. People like Mike Sabrin and Scott Griggs, um, Bruce Parker, and others like them. And they put together in 1995 a checklist of all the Lepidoptera, and they visited as many sites as they could themselves back then in order to study moths and butterflies. And you can see those dots scattered on this map around Vermont where they went. So they went to all those sites, plus they looked at some of the historic collections and came up with 89 species of butterflies known for Vermont. And that was a lot of work just back then, just to get that. So in the 1990s, we thought there was 89 species. So fast forward, we decided when we did the first butterfly atlas, which some of you helped us do in 2002 to 2007, we discovered a whole bunch of more butterfly species that were in Vermont that were under the radar back in the 1990s and before. And we ended up with 108 species known for Vermont. And we collected about 30,000 butterfly records altogether across the state. It was an amazing effort. And then fast forward to the current atlas, it's even crazier now with so many volunteers helping us. Already after 2 years, we're now up to 119 species. And we've already recorded just in 2 years 23,000 butterfly records. So amazing. That's unbelievable. So we're almost reaching what we did in 6 years in the first atlas, just in 2 years. It's really phenomenal. I appreciate that. So if you go to our Butterfly Atlas webpage, you'll see right now overall in our database we have 115,000 butterfly records. Over 3,000 people like you have helped collect that data over all the years. 119 species, 47 data sets. So that could be the first atlas. It could be museum specimens from UVM that we've cataloged. It could be museum specimens from all over the world that happen to come from Vermont. They're all in here, 47 data sets. We have 53,000 images, and the map is literally coded in butterfly observations over the years. And if you look at it, it's really mostly modern records. If you look at the historic records here from the 1800s, late 1800s, we have records from the late 1800s bouncing along, and we get into the 1960s, then 1970s, and finally in the 1980s, we start getting a lot of records in some of the historic records. But still, we only have about 3 or 4 thousand records historically. But then you can see the first atlas where we have this big bump 10,000 records a year or so. And then I think we were a little exhausted after that for a few years. But then came online things like iNaturalist and eButterfly. And you can see everyone started using these apps more and more. And then we started atlasing again, and we're back up to having a lot of records. So, what do we do with all this data? This is the exciting part about it. Um, we're able to start looking at it. And the great thing about this data is when we do these atlases is that the sampling scheme a lot makes us sort of sample the entire state. So we're not just at our favorite places to watch butterflies. We're actually forced to go across the state in a systematic way and look at them. So we have these blocks that you can see on this map, and that we call them our priority blocks. There's 184 of them. And back in 1976, during the first breeding bird atlas, they randomly chose these blocks across Vermont using a randomized scheme. And little did they know, they actually picked them. They were random, but they picked them nicely because the amount that's in each of these biophysical regions, each one of these colors, is exactly correct for the sampling blocks. And so these sampling blocks have gone on to be used for the first butterfly atlas, where we did all 184 blocks. The second breeding bird atlas, which we did all 184 blocks, the Vermont bumblebee survey we used them for, and now the second Vermont butterfly atlas. And so what folks have done in the first atlas and in the second atlas is we try to get folks to adopt a block. Some of you have already adopted several blocks. And once you adopt a block, it's 9 square miles, 3 by 3 miles. It sort of looks like this. So here's this block down near Springfield and Putney. And the block looks like this. It's along the Connecticut River. You got some open areas, you got things else, and you try to, in 5 years or 1 year, if you can do it fast, you try to find as many butterfly species in that block as you can by doing checklist surveys. So you visit a site and you spend hour there, 2 hours, whatever it takes. Let's say you're in Putney Meadows here, walking back and forth, trying to find as many butterflies as you can and count them all and put them as a checklist. This gives us really amazing data so we can do stuff like this. So this is the first atlas, and we were able to find out, because we systematically did the whole state, what each of those biophysical regions had for butterflies. So we knew right away that the Vermont Valley and the Taconic Mountains and the Southern Piedmont, these areas down in here, not the mountains, this here and over here, they had the highest butterfly diversity out of the whole state. And we were also able to start looking at, like, okay, how many species were only in one biophysical region? And so if you look, like, there's maybe 5% or 6% of butterflies are only in one biophysical region in this chart. And of all 8 biophysical regions, there's probably something like 58% of the butterfly species can be found in every single one. So we start to be able to find out who's a generalist, who's not, where are they specialized, things like that. And then the big thing we could do is we could actually, for the first time ever in Vermont, give them conservation status ranks. We had enough data after the first atlas that we could figure out, who's vulnerable, who's imperiled, who's secure, which species are the ones that we need to pay attention to. And then along came this wildlife action plan, and it started in 2005. The federal government gives each state a certain amount of money for non-game wildlife conservation, and to get that money, you have to do a wildlife action plan every 10 years. So the last one was in 2015. The current wildlife action plan for Vermont, we're writing it right now with the state. We're helping them write it. And so we have 20 species now, which are called species of greatest conservation need out of these. So about a quarter of the species are vulnerable or worse off in Vermont, we think, and about 20 of them are species of greatest conservation need that they need help like right now. We couldn't do any of this kind of work right here at all without data across the state figuring out who's rare, who's not, who's declining. And if you look at some of these greatest conservation need species, I sort of split them into three groups. There's these grassland and shrubland species, things like juniper hairstreaks, cobweb skipper, dusted skipper. Dusted skipper is only found, it's really actually now only found along the interstate I-91 on the first three exits, believe it or not. Monarchs, which are now up for listing as federally listed as threatened, and common branded skipper. And these are butterflies you can actually go out and find, no problem, if you know where to look. And we need that. And then there's some forest species. I highlighted a couple: West Virginia white and early hair streak, which will be flying next month. West Virginia whites will. These require certain kinds of hardwood forests. They never leave the forest, these two species. Early hair streaks are in beech forests, and West Virginia whites need these really rich, luscious hardwood forests. And then hackberry emperor and tawny emperor, which were only discovered in the first atlas, and now we know are both in the Connecticut River Valley and in some of the river valleys in Champlain. They need they need hackberry trees that only are really growing along riverine corridors. And then finally, there's wetland groups. We have three bog species that are one of them we just discovered in this atlas, bog elfin, which Brian Pfeiffer finally discovered after we were racing for 25 years to find this species. We finally found it in one bog. And then some skippers that really like sedge meadows, like old giant beaver meadows, things like Dion skipper and two-spotted skipper. So this is a taste of sort of the species, the 20 species of greatest conservation need, and things that we're able to focus on now because we have this amazing data. One of them I'd like to point out is this silvery checker spot. We have not seen this butterfly since 2005, and its populations have crashed in the Northeast for unknown reasons, and we may consider listing this species soon. This is one that we're really going to be focused on over the next couple of years to find out if it's still even in Vermont, and if so, where and what its status is now. And again, we can only do that with folks like you. And then with all this data, what we're able to do is to start to actually model where species are now and where they're going to be in the future. So here's a model we're working on right now for West Virginia white. It's that species I told you is only in rich hardwood forests. It's a true forest species. It will never leave the forest. It turns out that, and I'll talk more about this in a second, but its range-wide decline, which here's its entire range, which is basically in the Appalachians and then over in the upper Midwest. Its entire range-wide decline right now has been 98% over the last 20 years. It's in real trouble. We may have populations here where all these white dots are populations we have. We may have populations here that might be some of the most stable populations in the nation. And so this might be a species that, even though it could be kind of common in this region down in the southwest of Vermont, we might be really important for us to do a lot of conservation for it just because we have the best populations. And we're able to look at the future. The green shows where it might be based on climate change in the future. And so we're starting to understand we're starting to try to understand how these butterflies might be moving in the future and where they might be moving to, and if we have protection for them in those places too. So when we start to get a lot of data, when we start to get sort of what we call big data, we can start doing modeling like this to understand conservation into the future. So you may have heard recently in the last 3 weeks or so, these headlines, things like a country without butterflies, rapid butterfly decline, U.S. butterflies all in trouble as their numbers decline. 1 in 5 butterflies have disappeared. I mean, the headlines 3 weeks ago were all over the map about butterfly decline. And what happened was this really amazing paper came out um, that looked at butterfly populations across the United States. And probably the best article that came out, which I really recommend everybody go and check out, was in the New York Times. And they have this amazing interactive tool on there too, where you can plug in your town and you can see I plugged in my town, Woodstock, Vermont, and it actually kicks out like, hey, of the 114 species you could see in Woodstock, which was a little bit, I don't think I could find 114, but I could in the whole state. Then they tell you nationally how they're doing. And so 82 species that could be found in Woodstock are declining in the last 20 years. It's a really amazing story for an amazing study. And the study was done by some of the leading butterfly researchers across the nation. And they basically took 35 monitoring programs, all these blue dots across the nation, and put them all together in some pretty fancy statistical models to try to figure out over the last 20 years, since the year 2000, how butterflies are doing across the nation. And overall, there was a 22% decrease in the number of butterflies during that period. You can, if you focus on Vermont right here, you'll see that there's not very many dots in Vermont, and there's a lot of places that don't have very many dots. They just didn't have a lot of data they could use in Vermont that they considered to be long-term monitoring. And so the only dots they really had were Fourth of July butterfly counts to use, which are they're great when you don't have anything, but they're not the end all be all. And so, in other words, we're really lacking in data when it comes to looking at long-term changes in Vermont. But if we continue to look at this a little bit more, they broke it down into regions. So the Northeast, 44% of the butterflies in the Northeast were considered declining. That's 47 species decline, and only 19 are increasing over the last 20 years. And so if you looked at species richness, the number of species you could find in the Northeast, it's also dropped, as you can see. So if you go out butterflying, you're likely to find less species than you used to. So in other words, if you go and look at this even more, you'll find out that butterflies are in the nation are doing really poorly over the last 20 years. But the problem is, as I said, we don't have great data for Vermont here. And that's what we're trying to change right now. We're trying to get better data with this second atlas. So a lot of people ask me real quick, like, well, why has there been this huge decline of butterflies across the nation? And really, I think David Wagner from Yukon summed it up best when he said, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's everything you can think of. It's everything that comes with climate change, droughts, storm intensities, fires, all kinds of interruptions from that. It's land use change. It's agricultural intensification. It's insecticides. It's deforestation. It's introduced species. It's everything. The trick is that we need to start thinking about things not as 1,000 cuts, but actually which cuts are doing what to which butterflies. We need to stop thinking about it as just all butterflies and start thinking about, okay, these butterflies that are great species of greatest conservation need, what is going on with them? What do they need? What can we do to make them better? And so by getting this data in the second atlas, we're going to even know more about what butterflies are going to be in conservation need, but we're also going to finally have some real data from these counts that we're all doing across the state. We're going to have real data about how their populations have and have not changed over the last 20, 25 years in Vermont, and how their phenology might be changing. And it's going to be spectacular, and we'll be able to really come up with some conservation plans and conservation actions that we can really do on the ground for butterflies right here in Vermont. So that's why we need a big crew like you to help us get the Butterfly Atlas done, to get all these 184 blocks done at minimum, and even more if we can. And so we can really start to understand butterfly range and population changes across the state at a pretty fine scale. And so we can do something about any of those changes and keep the common butterflies common and keep the rare ones here on the ground. And get a lot more people just enjoying butterflies too. To me, it just brings, great joy to be out there butterflying. In a world of sometimes turmoil, I turn to butterflies. It's what I do, and I think a lot of you will find the same thing too. And so with that, I just wanted to sort of fire you up for why we're trying to collect all this data, and learn about butterflies. And I'll turn it over to Dana to talk a little bit about how the atlas works, maybe sort of a quick beginner's guide to how you can start understanding how to maybe start identifying butterflies if you don't know much, and get excited about the season that's coming. And I'll just end by saying that anybody can help us collect butterfly data. You don't have to know anything about butterflies. You just have to have the energy to go out and find butterflies and take pictures of them and look for them. And after a while, one day, you'll be a butterfly expert too. You'll be identifying them easily too. So it just starts out one butterfly at a time. Thanks, Dana.
Okay, I had to find my unmute button. All
Not
right,
to
so hopefully everyone can see my screen now. So as Kent said, I'm going to be covering a little bit about how new butterfly watchers can learn kind of basics of butterfly ID, as well as sharing some tools to go out butterfly watching and also how to join the Butterfly Atlas. And I know that we have quite a range of skills here today. And so hopefully for those of you who are more advanced butterflyers, this won't bore you to death with the basics of butterfly watching. So as Kent said, there's over 20,000 species worldwide, and in Vermont, we have about 119 species so far. And this seems like a lot to learn,
Oh,
especially when you usually.
sorry, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry. I don't think your slides are shared and maybe mine's. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Um, why am I not?
Does anyone want to write in chat what you are seeing on your screen right now? Okay, that might just be your slide, Kent.
All right. Um, sorry, for some reason I'm missing the like stop sharing toolbar. Sorry, Dana. I'm working on it.
No worries. All right. And since everyone else can see it, I'll let you continue to struggle with your computer a little bit. So as I was saying, you're often going to be seeing your butterflies like this. They're either going to be kind of small and far away and blending into the background, or zooming by you really quickly in kind of a blur. But as you can see from all of these pictures, each of these was able to be identified still, if not to species, then at least to something like genus. So what that says is that you don't have to take flawless pictures or even be able to identify down to species to contribute to these kinds of projects. But you can begin to narrow down what you're looking for if you're looking in a guidebook by grouping species by features that are easily identifiable. And when butterflies are zooming past you real fast like that, you're probably going to notice two things, and that's color and size. So breaking down by color, our first group of butterflies are kind of our yellow and white butterflies. And there's only three different groups that anything yellow or white can be. The first one being our swallowtails. These are some of our largest butterflies. They are for common household items. They're about the length of your credit card up to almost the length of a phone, a regular kind of smartphone. They have tails on the base of their wings, and they also often have this yellow and black color pattern. And sometimes this pattern can be reversed and they'll be all black with yellow stripes. Our sulfurs are a smaller species of our yellow butterflies, or a smaller genus of our yellow butterflies. These tend to be really bright. They tend to be out in your meadows and on your flowers. And they'll be a little bit smaller, about the width of your credit card. So if you turn it sideways, they're about that big. And even smaller than them are going to be our whites. There's only three species in Vermont, and these ones are about the same size as the sulfur. So again, the width of your credit card. And they'll either be all white or white with some black stripes, or they'll have this kind of pale yellow kind of dusting on the outside of their wings. So moving on to our most popular butterfly color are our oranges, and these are our large orange butterflies. So again, butterflies that are about the length of your credit card. So if you see an orange butterfly flying past you and it's got lots of black dots and these wavy kind of stripes on it, That's going to be one of our four species of fritillaries. Everyone's probably familiar with monarchs and their closely related species, the viceroy, which looks very similar. And both of these have really bold black lines. And our last species of kind of this larger orange colored butterfly are ladies. There's, again, three species. And these ones have orange around kind of the center of their body, but they have these really thick black wingtips. And these black wingtips have really big white splashes on them. And then moving on to our smaller and medium-sized orange butterflies, we have our commas, like Kent was mentioning in the middle or in the beginning. And these are our butterflies that tend to be out now. They're very early season. They're about medium size, so they're about the size of the sulfur, so the width of your credit card to a little bit bigger. They have these really beautiful orange background with some black dots. But the biggest, most obvious characteristic for them is that their wing borders are really rough. So they don't have these nice, smooth, rounded borders the way that other butterflies do. And this is in part to help them blend into their habitat, which is often in forests, so blending in with leaves or barks or other rough shapes. A little bit of a smaller butterfly. These ones are going to be around quarter sized. And when they come out, they will be everywhere. And these are our crescents. And these ones have very prominent kind of orange and black patterns, but they're highly variable even between individuals. So almost no two crescents that you look at are going to be exactly alike. And right now, actually, it's almost impossible to identify a crescent to the species in the field. So if you're not comfortable with that, you're already all set. And our last little species, or our last little grouping, are coppers. And these ones are some of our really little butterflies. They can be, again, about the size of a quarter. And they've got usually kind of very silvery wings with these big, wide patches of orange. And then they'll also have black dots kind of everywhere. Now, of course, orange, like I said, is a very popular color. So continuing on to our, what I like to think of as our Halloween colored butterflies, the skippers. These ones come in a lot of different color patterns of oranges and blacks and browns. And this is the most numerous group of species that we have. They've got 41 total, and they are really difficult to tell apart for pretty much everyone except for, experts. And these ones are pretty small. They can be anywhere from quarter sized or a little bigger down to even a penny sized. And what makes them really unique and easy to tell that they're a skipper is that they will hold their wings open at about a 45-degree angle, as you can see in the European skipper. And they'll also hold their upper and lower wings slightly apart. So it's a very kind of unique stance. And I also think they look more triangular, especially when you're looking at them from the side, than many of our other butterflies. And another thing, within the skippers, there are four species that are much easier to tell apart. These ones are our dusky wings. They are also quite small, but they are all are going to have this dusky or sooty kind of gray-black color. And these ones will sit with their wings flat. Now, moving on to a non-orange color, we've got our blue and our gray butterflies. We've only got two groups here, which makes it quite easy to kind of put them into a category. We've got our hair streaks, which are about the size of a quarter to about the width of your credit card. And these ones are all gray. I think they have very kind of stark lines. And as you can see on their wings, they have almost this like dashed line in black and also white. And those are quite common in most of the species in this group. It's quite common for them to have these orange spots in the lower wing. And moving on to our blues and azures, these are about the same size as the hair streaks. They are also silver gray, but I think they look a little bit softer, especially when they have this kind of fringe going on the side. And if you're lucky enough to see them with their wings open, you're going to see a brighter blue and kind of an iridescent color on the inside. And that outside wing is also going to have a lot of little black dots. And while you'll see that this particular species has these orange dots, that's not actually a characteristic of the group. It's just for this one species, which is kind of copying the hair streaks. So our last group of butterflies are kind of our other category. They're not as easily marked down by similar features, with the exception of our with eyes categories, which is a group of several different species and genuses, including the pearly eyes, wood nymphs, wood satyrs, and browns, which kind of you notice a pattern in their names. They are mostly forest butterflies, and all of them are going to have these distinct little round eye dots on the ends of their wings. And those dots are an anti-predator feature. They're either to look big and scary and scare things away, or to redirect attention of a predator to the back of their body so that it protects their head. We also have several butterflies that have unique features. These are just a couple of them that we have in Vermont, but these ones are much easier to learn to identify because they don't really look like anything else in Vermont. Our white admiral is a big black butterfly with these very distinct white stripes, and they're quite common. And this is actually a butterfly that I often can see and identify when I'm driving around my car. The hackberry emperor, which Kent talked about earlier, these ones look a little bit like the lady butterflies with that orange and black, really, distinct black wing border, but they're a little bit duller in color. You're really going to only find them around hackberries or that riverine ecosystem. And they also have this weird habit of hanging out upside down. Another one is the Baltimore checker spot, which is a very popular butterfly. Many people think this looks particularly striking. They have these really long wings with a black background and lots of little white dots and kind of orange splotches. And these ones you'll find in kind of marshy habitats because their main host plant, which means the plant that they will lay their eggs on, is the turtle head flower. And last, Kent's favorite, the Milbert's tortoiseshell. This one I think looks like a face, maybe like a Cheshire cat smile. You can see it's got these little red dots that kind of look like eyes, and then this orange and yellow, almost U-shaped pattern on the bottom of their wings that gives it that smile look. So now that we've kind of been through a number of those general rules, which can help us narrow down what we're seeing, there's another way that you can look at butterflies. And I got this quote from a YouTuber and Maine bird expert named Bob Duchesne. And he has this really great way of identifying birds, which is the most common butterflies or birds that you're likely to see are the most common butterflies for your area. And one way that you can find out that butterflies are common in your area is to use iNaturalist. So if anyone is not familiar with iNaturalist, it's a crowdsourced nature observation app. You can record observations of anything living, and then you can also look at what other people in your area have been seeing. So in order to find what's common near you, you can go up to the top and click Explore. And then once you have your search bar, you can put in butterflies. And here I've put in the state of Vermont, but you can put in your town or your county as well. Hit the go, and then switch to the species filter, and it will give you this nice list of butterflies. And if you look at the observations numbers, it also filters it, or it sorts it by the most common species. So it's a really great way to see what's around you all the time. Some additional features to think about when you are working on ID. So when you're looking at species in a field guide or online, oftentimes it's going to give you a bunch of really technical terms for field marks or the features that are unique or characteristic of a species. So most guidebooks, like this one here, are going to have a diagram in front that'll help you learn these terms. But I put some common ones here, including the four-wing disc, which is the upper wing, the little kind of part that I've circled here helps us tell that this is an orange sulfur. We can tell the monarch from the viceroy because on their lower wings or their hind wings, they have this really distinct black PM line. And another common phrase that you'll see is what's called a post-median band, which I've highlighted here in the gray hair streak. It's kind of this middle end of the wing kind of area that often will have unique series of stripes or dots or color bands. Another thing that you can do is you can turn to AI for help. So this eButterfly AI, which I'll talk a little bit more how to get here later, but you can just add an image and click identify, and it will help give you an answer. It'll give you a couple of different species that of what butterfly could be in that picture. And kind of unique to this system is it'll also give you these percentages on the right. And those are going to tell you the likelihood that that species is what's actually in the picture. And this is like any AI, it can be wrong, but this is a great option to also use to help you narrow down your choices. So that's it for our ID section. And now moving on to what you can take with you to Butterfly Watch. Luckily, it's quite easy. You can just go out with three things, your smartphone or a digital camera if you prefer to take that instead. It's always great to have a guide or some kind of field guide out with you so you can identify butterflies in the field or at home. And then also a pair of binoculars. And since butterflies love to be out in the warm, hot, sunny weather, it's always great to make sure that you're also taking care of your health and bring along some sun protection. So besides using your phone for the camera, there are also a couple of apps that you can take out to help you. The first one is eButterfly, which is the app that we use to record data for the Vermont Butterfly Atlas. And this, if you've ever used eBird, this works very similarly. It's a checklisting app, which I'll go into detail on how to checklist in a bit. But why we use eButterfly versus an app like that's more common and that I introduced earlier, iNaturalist, is because eButterfly collects what we call effort. And this means it helps us collect how long you were out looking for butterflies. And also, it helps us collect if there are no butterflies. And both of these are much more useful for the kind of research and conservation that we do than iNaturalist observations, which are kind of like points on a map. eButterfly also offers you the option of having that butterfly AI system. And we also have forums on the eButterfly website where you can chat or share stories or ask questions of other butterfly watchers, both who are working on the Vermont Butterfly Atlas or even worldwide. And iNaturalist is also great to have out, especially if you like looking at nature in general. It helps you record a broader range of species, and it can be especially helpful for recording and identifying host plants. So one way to be a great butterflyer is to be a great botanist, because many butterfly species have very specific ties to certain plants, which are their host plants. So for field guides, here's a couple of recommendations that we offer. Some of these, like the top two, Kaufman's and the Glassberg, are very broad, so they cover all of North America, and they can be kind of difficult to flip through unless you know exactly what you're going for. And there's also some little ones down below that are a little smaller that are more focused on the East Coast. I tend to use the Swift's guide just because I really enjoy the visual aspect of it. If you look here, you can see that it's got arrows pointing to specific field marks, and that makes it really easy for me to figure out what's going on. Versus the Kaufman guide and some of the other guides are more of a classic field guide, so they give you more information in written form about the butterflies, and you can kind of choose which style works best for you. We also have multiple webinars that talk about butterfly ID, so you can find them on the VCE website under the Vermont Atlas of Life. And also New Hampshire's Butterfly Monitoring Network, which is like the New Hampshire version of the Vermont Butterfly Atlas. It has also been running a series of currently, live webinars and also recorded webinars that have experts talking about specific butterfly groups and how to ID them. So for binoculars, you're going to want a close focusing pair because usually you'll be looking at butterflies from about 6 to 8 feet away before they're going to fly away. So you want something that's got 6 times or 8 times magnification. But most binoculars tend to be 8 times or 10 times magnification. So if you've already got a pair of binoculars, you can always check it and it's probably fine. Higher magnification you can still use. It'll just be a little bit harder to focus on the butterflies. If you are looking for a new pair of butterfly-specific binoculars, we have a about $100 pair here called the Pentax Papilio. And this series is specifically for butterflies, and they're about a 6.5 magnification. Okay, so that is the end of all that stuff. Now, hopefully you are excited about butterflying and you know what you need to bring out. So let's go over how to join the Vermont Butterfly Atlas. And you can do it in 4 steps. Step one is that you can pull out your phone right now and look up the eButterfly app in your app store, and it'll be represented by this little butterfly icon that you see in the screen here. Or you can visit the e-butterfly.org website if you prefer to input data online. The app is free as well. So second, once you're there, you're going to make an account so that we can keep track of who you are and you can proclaim all the great butterflies that you've seen. And then third, you're going to choose a place to go butterfly. Now, Kent has already talked a little bit about our wonderful butterfly block map, which you can also visit on the VCE website. And what you do to adopt a block, or let me explain the colors first. So we've got a couple of colored squares here. These are mostly our priority blocks. The red and the green are both important places to, or the most important places to butterfly, I should say. The green blocks are the ones that have been adopted by someone already, and the red blocks are ones that are not currently adopted. The yellow blocks on here are our non-priority blocks. So they're places that are maybe not, the most important places to butterfly, but we still really appreciate the data that comes from those. And those have been adopted by people as well. So one thing that I think people don't always know about adopting a block is that multiple people can adopt a block. And it, in fact, can be really helpful to have multiple people going out. You can kind of cover for each other if someone goes on vacation or, you can cover more time period that way. The way to adopt a block is you just find a block, click on it, and it'll pop up a little pop-up that'll give you the option to sign up. But if you're not quite sure you want to commit to adopting a block, that's also okay. As Kent said, any butterfly that you record on eButterfly in Vermont is going to be added to this project. So feel free to butterfly in your backyard or on your favorite trail, or even, record butterflies that you see on your way to the bank. Or you can also help by doing what we call block busting, which is going around to maybe visiting these priority blocks and finding a cool new trail that you can explore and butterfly at the same time. And once you've got your place to butterfly and you've got your eButterfly app all set up, you can just grab your gear and go. But this doesn't quite tell us exactly how we can input or make sure that the information that we record gets to us here at VCE. And I'm going to really quickly go through how to use the eButterfly mobile app, but we also have a number of guides and videos that'll go more in depth on how to use the app and the website. And we'll also have a webinar on May 7th this year that'll go through this process in much more detail. So if you have logged into eButterfly on your phone, you're going to get this screen. And if you're out and you're ready to start looking for butterflies, you just hit select checklist, and it's going to give you this screen. Now, if you see a butterfly, you can use the search bar up at the top to start typing in the species that you think it is, and it'll give you a list of suggestions, and you can just click the plus sign to add the number of butterflies of that species you saw. But of course, we just went through that you don't have to know the species in order to add your butterflies. And in fact, if you see a big yellow and black butterfly with tails and you think, yeah, that's a swallowtail, you can just type in swallowtail and add that. Or even you can add butterfly, just butterfly, or also not butterfly, if you want to record something like a moth. So if you click on the name of the butterfly, you can see tap to submit details. That'll bring you to another screen where you can add extra things like comments about what it was doing, or extra details about the features that it has, or submit photos as well. And this is especially helpful if you do add something like a butterfly category, because then people online, butterfly experts and other volunteers, can go in and look at the description that you gave it and help you figure out what you had seen. So once you're done with adding the butterfly that you saw, you can click the down search and it'll bring you back to your checklist screen, the second screen. Except now it'll have your list of butterflies on here as well. Now, next to the search bar, you can see there's this little camera with the purple butterfly in the middle. That's how you access that butterfly AI. So you click that and then do the same process that I talked about earlier. You can just upload a photo and it'll give you some suggestions. And if you say, yes, that suggestion looks absolutely correct, you can click on it and add it to your checklist from there. So once you're done with your checklist, you can hit next. and it'll bring up this last screen. And this is just asking you some extra information, including, how many people were out with you, how long were you out, and also this, I am submitting a checklist of all butterflies I observed at this location, date, and time. So are you confident that you were out looking for butterflies and you saw everything? Now, two ways that you can also use this that's a little less intuitive. So you can still add a single butterfly sighting in this platform. You just fill it out the same way. You just put one of whatever you saw. And in this submitting a checklist section, you just put no, because you didn't go out for an amount of time to look for everything. Another thing, as I said earlier, those no butterfly checklists are still really important. And you can go through and put no butterflies on here and submit that checklist. And it's as important for us to know where butterflies are not as it is for us to know where they are. All right, so that was a brief introduction to the Vermont Butterfly Atlas. If you want more information or find yourself having more questions, you are welcome to email either Kent or I, or you can come join us on April 23rd, also at 7 p.m. for the second Butterfly Atlas Q&A. We're going to be sharing on the progress from the last couple of years in this specific atlas, share some stories from different people about the successes and challenges they've had, and also share tips and answer questions about really anything butterfly. Like I said, you can also join us on May 7th for a more in-depth introduction to how to use eButterfly. This will be both for the app version, which is new as of last year, and also the desktop version, which has been around a little bit longer. And as Kent mentioned, we are also holding a number of in-person trainings this summer. And I've listed some of the locations and our partners that we'll be working in, but we have many more that are currently getting scheduled. So keep an eye out on our Vermont Butterfly Atlas events page, as well as checking your local nature center or your local conservation commission for any trainings that'll be happening in your area. And I think now we will take questions.
Thanks. Thank you, Dana. That was awesome. It's hard to talk about so much in 1 hour. And so it's just skimming everything. So I'm sure people have questions. And if you do, either throw them in a chat or unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question. One of the questions we had was if a photo is posted, to use the location and time data attached to the photo. And that's actually a deeper question than you might think. If you use iNaturalist and you put a photo on iNaturalist, it actually automatically uses the date and time attached to that photo from your camera, if you did it with a camera, or from your phone, and fills that out for you. If you use eButterfly, it actually asks you three questions. And the three questions are, one, where are you butterflying? And so you can either zoom in on a map and put a dot down, or you can use the automatic GPS. And then the second one is how are you butterflying? So are you walking a transect, and what time did you start, and how many people are with you? It asks you all the stuff about how you're getting it done. And then the third step is what did you see and how many of them? So it's which butterflies did you see? Did you see a monarch, and how many did you count? And so it's a lot more in depth, as Dana mentioned, when you use eButterfly, and allows us to do a lot more intensive statistical work with the data when you use eButterfly. It doesn't mean iNat's not useful. It's completely useful. And so if you're only an iNat user, that's totally fine. It's just presence only data, and we can only do so much with that compared to count data. But we love all of it, and so whatever works for you, we're happy to have it in any manner. One note here, Dana, is Karen says that the Brattleboro Conservation Commission would love to have training down here in Brattleboro. I don't. Oh, you're answering it.
Yeah, so it's answered. But yeah, so that Brattleboro is one of the locations that the library is doing a whole community science program this summer, and we're scheduled at some point to come down, and I think the topic's going to be butterflies. But the Guilford Conservation Commission is also interested in having a butterfly walk later in the summer, so we can kind of connect on that and maybe make it a bigger event.
Lisa has a really good question that we sort of touched on, but just barely, which is if you don't adopt a Vermont block or square, do your e-butterfly info still go to us, to the atlas? 100%. You do not have to adopt a block. Adopting a block is like the highest level where you're committing to like really trying to get that block done over a couple years. And not everyone can do that or has the time to do that. So if you're just butterflying in Vermont, anything you put on either iNaturalist or eButterfly, we totally have in our atlas. We totally that comes immediately into our atlas. So you don't have to adopt a block. You can go butterflying some Saturday anywhere you want in Vermont, and it all counts. One of the great things you can do too is look at a block that's not adopted and be like, I'm gonna go Saturday and do that block. You don't have to adopt it. Just go and butterfly for a day there, and it really helps us fill in some blanks there. So yeah. Um, is it okay to post observations on both eButterfly and iNaturalist? Incredibly common question. Can I post on both sites? You can post on both sites, no problem. It doesn't matter if there's duplicates. When we work with the data, we go through a whole series of intensive um, cleaning of the data, including deduplicating the data and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to make sure you get cred or want to share with your friends both on eButterfly and iNaturalist, by all means, go for it. It's totally fine. I've done it before. I want to brag to all my friends when I find something cool, or I've done it because I want to get more help on something that I can't quite figure out what the ID might be. So fire away at both sites. It's no problem. Yep, you don't have to be an e-butterfly. You can use only iNaturalist if you want to, and vice versa. So yeah, you can double up or you can just put it on one side or the other. Again, it's just we just try to encourage people if they can to go the full tilt and count butterflies and do the full checklist because we can do so much more with that in monitoring species. And ask Ann Suoko, who is one of our volunteers in this area and has adopted a couple blocks. She asks, which is better, use eButterfly in the field or take photos and field notes and then add the data to eButterfly at another time? And read my mind because this is what I do. I actually don't tell my colleagues that I did the app with, but I actually don't like to use apps in the field. I'm in the field and I use my phone a lot to take pictures and I might check on an ID of something if I'm a little confused by it. But the dirty secret is I don't use the app in the field for eButterfly. I don't use iNaturalist in the field, and I don't use eBird very often in the field, the apps. I'm an old-fashioned notebook kind of guy. And so I actually use my notebook to keep my checklist and write down everything, including the times I'm out there, host plants I find and everything. Meanwhile, I'm taking all the pictures with my phone or my regular camera of host plants, of caterpillars, of adult butterflies. And the bad part about that is when I get home, that means I have a bunch of work to do to pull them all off my phone, to put them either into the app or into the web interface. And so I have time at home that I have to do that, and it would be done if I just did it in the field. So technically it's slower, but I like to do it that way. I don't use the app in the field. So however you experiment with and like to do it, if you like to use the app in the field, that's great. If you'd like to use a notebook and load it later when you get home, that's also works fine too. Um, anything else? Anything coming to your mind, Dana, that you want to talk about?
I want to promote on eButterfly the forums, which currently I've been posting since I think last year, a weekly butterfly quiz. So you can either come test your butterfly knowledge or, learn some more about butterflies from that as well.
It is really fun. I try to take the quiz every week. It's a blast. Sometimes they're easy for me, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I'm like, whoa, I got to think about that one. So yeah, they sort of range and they're great. And I will say that I think I wrote this in the chat when you were speaking, Dana, that um, uh, eons ago when I was learning how to ID butterflies in Vermont, I made flashcards. I actually went and found a whole bunch of old butterfly field guides and cut them up and made them into flashcards. And I grouped them like you did. I grouped them into colors or I grouped them into the same shapes. And I'd play with them all the time, these flashcards, and it really helped me. And now we have iNatural's Knee Butterfly, where there's thousands of images that you can go through to help look at too. So with a field guide in your hand and all those butterfly images on those sites, you can really start to do your own groupings. I think there was another question here. Are you surveying moths? We're not surveying moths in this study, but I do a lot of moth work, and we do have a mini study every year. It's a moth blitz at the end of July during International Moth Week. And I do encourage everyone to watch moths if they're into it in their backyard. And we are working on a moth atlas right now on the side where we have discovered over 400 new species for Vermont over the last decade or so. And we are creating these automated moth monitoring machines that use computer vision. And the only way we've been able to create these machines is because folks like you have submitted moth images from your backyard to iNaturalist and other places to help us train the computer vision. So it's another topic, and I should do a webinar on it sometime. But watching moths is awesome, and we're doing a lot of work with moths too. And if you contact me, I'd be happy to talk to you more about moths. I should be careful because I'll just go off on moths and it'll be bad. What's the best way to ID the new swallowtail from the eastern or Canada? Oh, Clint, you had to ask that. It's actually pretty tricky. And but I will tell you in a nutshell, I'm going to write a blog post about this and I'm going to send out kick off the new butterfly season with a newsletter that's going to have this blog post with it. But I can tell you real quickly that the first thing is date, believe it or not. This swallowtail that we see in July that is often coming to our lilies in our gardens and burying themselves in them. And it's well after the spring Canadian tiger swallowtail is done flying. And we see this sort of a little bit bigger tiger swallowtail. It's that one. It's in July mostly. Could be a little bit late in June, could be a little bit into August. We're working on figuring that part out. So the second thing is um, the along the lower hind wing, the black anal line on the lower hind wing on a Canadian tiger swallowtail is greater than 50% of that cell. And on a midsummer tiger tail, it's about 50%. And on an eastern tiger swell, it's a thin little line. And then there's a bunch of other things like the clasper colors on males are yellowish compared to sort of a dusky color, and some other innate things that are hard to look at too. But with I'm gonna create this blog post and I'm gonna create a mini little field guide for it. It should really help everybody. But the real kicker is gonna be like if you see a tiger in July, it's gonna almost certainly be a midsummer tiger swallowtail. Um, yeah, I don't know. I can go into more. I don't have the pictures handy, but I will be writing a blog post and I will be creating this little field guide with little lines pointing to things you should look for and how to take good pictures of it to ID it. Um, Yep, someone was asking about gardening for butterflies. I think Dana wrote on there. That's great. We have been with some bee work we've been doing in Vermont too, gardening for bees. And Spencer Hardy has been working on um, figuring out plants that are locally sourced, native plants for bees and other pollinators. So I'm going to get something out about that in the newsletter too for folks to think about their pollinator gardens. Anything else? I'm sure there's a ton of things. I mean, this again, we really wanted to just get you excited about the upcoming butterfly season and get you thinking about butterflies. Having trouble installing eButterfly on my iPhone 17. Jack, can you email me tomorrow about that so we can discuss the exact trouble you're having? Um, and I might be able to troubleshoot that. So, but you have a brand new iPhone. So maybe email me and we can troubleshoot that and get through it.
So I know that a lot of people are interested in gardening for butterflies and pollinators. So I did just want to say out loud, um, for anybody who's not looking at the chat, what I put in here. So if you're looking for plants that are great for pollinators, the Xerces Society is a great resource. They have a ton of plant lists that tell you exactly when flowers will be blooming, where to find them, which pollinators they're good for. Another thing to think about when you're gardening for any kind of pollinator, but also for butterflies, is to think about how you can design your garden and your yard for their whole life cycle. So, what are the host plants that butterflies are using for their eggs and caterpillars that you can help provide them to help us give us a more healthy population of that species? And if you're inviting caterpillars into your yard, you're also inviting birds into your yard. So, you can make it kind of a healthier ecosystem overall. And I also wanted to promote that one of our other scientists at VC, Desiree Narango, is also running an experiment right now that's looking at whether where your plants come from affects how good they are for pollinators. And you can follow along with that experiment in the link that I put in the chat.
I also put earlier in the chat that if anyone ever needs help with iNaturalist or eButterfly, or anything with a butterfly atlas, you can drop me an email and I'm happy to jump on like a Zoom call with you, a personal Zoom call, so I can share my screen and help troubleshoot or help teach you how to use something on the web or the app or anything you might need. I'm happy to schedule something with anybody to get them going and help them further. So don't be shy. Reach out to me, and I'm happy to do that. And then, yeah, anything else, Dana?
Nothing.
Anybody else have a burning any burning questions before we all retire and go study our butterflies? We're not going to be watching TV now. Let's go back and look at butterflies now, right? One of the things I do a lot of nights is ID butterflies because all the butterflies on iNaturalist and on eButterfly have to be ID'd by a human too. So I spend a lot of time IDing butterflies, which is another great way to really start honing in and learning your butterflies is to start helping ID them. Great. Well, Dana, thanks for putting this together and getting us all coordinated. Um, and thanks everyone for joining us. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you all. And I know a number of you have already adopted blocks, and this was kind of your first interaction with us, so welcome.
I'll hang out for a little bit more, but feel free to peel off. If anybody has a last minute question, I'll wait here till the bitter end before everyone leaves, and in case you have a last minute question.
This is Richard Rubin and Lynn. We aren't part of the joined eButterfly on the Eco Studies projects. Do we have to be? Can you hear? Sorry. Maybe they can't hear.
We can hear you.
Okay.
So, um, are either of you on either iNaturalist or eButterfly?
Yes, we've been with the Vernal Pool project and the bees.
Okay.
I just noticed that we aren't part of the butterfly one for that app.
Yeah, so I did drop in the chat. We don't have a specific project to join for iNaturalist, but if you're on eButterfly, we do have a project. You can join the VAL project, which you might be already a part of, the Vermont Atlas of Life. But again, any butterfly sighting that you put up on iNaturalist or eButterfly is going to automatically be included. So if you've been looking at butterflies, you're already in the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Orange milkweed. Is that the species? I'm trying to remember. It's like butterfly weed, right? Orange milkweed. Isn't the common name like butterfly
Yes.
weed?
I'm going to use iNaturalist to look it up.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's Lisa has a question about it on there, and I think it's just butterfly weed, which is I'm trying to remember the species for milkweed that is.
it's called butterfly milkweed. So
Yeah, it's fine, Lisa, for if they use it, it's totally fine. It won't affect anything about the monarchs. There is a milkweed in the south that people are planting. It's a tropical milkweed that's not good for monarchs.
hmm,
I'm trying to remember what the name of that is, and I'm spacing it, but it's not here in Vermont.
yeah.
They usually I had orange milkweed for a while in my butterfly garden, but they would nectar on it, but they would never lay eggs on it. I don't know why, but yeah.
And as someone who's not a gardener or a pollinator specialist, I would say there's a big push to incorporate native plants into gardens just because we're kind of moving locally and trying to support native local ecosystems. But most of the plants that you bring in that are kind of cultivated for gardens from other places are not going to be harmful in any way. And they'll still provide nectar and pollen for your pollinators. So they're fine.
We were so strict about everyone muting that nobody unmuted.
I know. Also, nobody turned on their camera.
Yeah, I think it's tuberosa. That's it, Lisa. It's right. Dana's got the link right there if you can hear us.
Yep.
Um, on iNaturals. It's definitely that one. There's also swamp milkweed, which I have in my garden, which is amazing. They love it, especially nectaring on it. A lot of butterflies do. And it's another native milkweed that's much less common in Vermont. And as it suggests, it grows in swamps and wetlands, but it grows f totally fine in a butterfly garden. And that's actually been really great in my butterfly garden. I got it at a nursery, so yeah.
Yeah, the tussock moths will come through.
Oh yeah. If it's decimated, it's definitely the tussock moths. They will. It does bloom later, yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it, Dana. Thanks, everyone. Um, I guess we're gonna shut down, and if you have any more questions, let us know. We're here. Yeah, you know what I do? Another thing I do, Deborah, is some of my regular milkweed, I actually will cut it back at the beginning of July so that forces it to re-sprout. And the second generation of monarchs, the monarchs that are going to fly to Mexico, love that fresh milkweed. The monarchs will lay their eggs more on that than anything else for the last generation here. And so it's a way to like force milkweed to be more succulent again. So after it's all done, it's seeded and it's like right when they're doing the last cut of hay in beginning of July, I cut all that stuff back in my garden. Not all of it, but I make sure there's no eggs or anything on it. But a lot of it I cut back and then I force it to resprout again. And they love that. There's a lot of work being done right now about how to mow for monarchs, and one of them is beginning of July in the Northeast is to mow strips or mow sections of your field to make the force the milkweed to resprout. All right, well, enjoy everybody. Thanks for coming. And now you got me all excited about monarchs coming back too. So I can't wait for the weather to break. Have a great night, and hope to run into some of you soon. Thanks, Dana.
Have a great night, everyone.